Good morning, Sam Tober, Sound of Joy Music Services, and we are back at the soccer camp for my first vlog video. This is probably the fourth video that I'm shooting. The other ones they sort of saved, was trying something different, but I wanted to weigh in on the conversation that's going around, I guess you can call it viral, of the pastor that fires the musician in the middle of the service. I've had a chance to read other people's commentaries here on YouTube. I was in an actual discussion on Zoom last night. I have a group of retired and current musicians who get together once a week just to discuss ways we can help musicians that are in the current field right now to avoid situations like this. Having been a 46-year church musician myself, retired now, and I look to help musicians learn songs. But I've always strayed away from relationships that musicians and leadership have because it varies from church to church, from personality to personality. And when you see these videos that sometimes come up and when you've been in the field and you've experienced not similar, but the same type of scenario during a service, it always tends to restoke fires that you thought that were out. So I'm just going to do this very short. I was almost talking longer on the first two videos, and I said, well, you know what, let me just shorten this and just give my 4C points. Communication, conversation, confrontation, and consequences. All starts with the C. From what I was able to view from the video and from listening to other commentaries and from discussions that I had on yesterday evening on my weekly Zoom meeting, everyone wants to look at who did what wrong? And of course, it was brought up that, well, what if the musician was in the spirit and the pastor should have just recognized that the musician was in the spirit and should have let the service go? Then the other side of the coin was, which is kind of what I leaned to as a young instrumentalist in high school band, we were taught to train, rather to pay attention to the conductor. If the conductor gave the actual stop sign in the music for whatever reason, then you didn't just continue playing because you were just looking at your music. You would stop and watch the conductor, and when he says go again, then you would proceed. Now, there are some that have the point of view of a congregant that says, well, just let him play, and because God is in, or I say, because the Spirit is in control. But then you go look for those scriptures where it says that, well, everybody is subject to the Spirit, but whoever is the leader or head or in charge is watching over everyone, and then you have a new person to be subject to. Again, the communication came out, stop. The conversation happened, went over to the instrument where the musician was and had a conversation with the musician. I said to stop. Confrontation. Now the eagles now balloon up, probably from both sides. I'm not going to stop or keep playing was a declaration of I'm going to keep going because of how and some musicians do get this thought process. You're not having church until I have church. Again, I was not that type of musician. Then there was the consequence, and as if you watch the video, I won't air it, but the consequence was during the last words were your services will no longer be needed. And for some reason, all of a sudden, the communication got through because the music stopped. Now, again, it was only a very short clip that was a live stream. What you're seeing now in this current environment of social media is that the things that were normally kept in-house, as someone often said in my day, used to hear the term, You shouldn't air your dirty laundry. Well, unfortunately now everything is being aired. You're seeing what happens on, not all the time. Again, I had my experiences and they weren't all the time, but when they did happen, yeah, I felt a certain kind of way if though, and in my case, it wasn't stop the music, but it was when you're playing behind a guest preacher whom you're not familiar with, you don't know whether to tune him up or to let him go out there and flounder on his own. So that was a snippet of my experience. And then I got the same experience where I said, well, you know what? I got burned the last time a musician said, hold your fire. I'm not ready for the music. So now I held my fire, and then I got chastised because I wasn't helping the musician. And then I had the other side of that coin. And then I was, in my mind, well, if you can do better than I am, here, I'll scoot over, I'll get off, you take care. That's what's going on in my mind for that time. But each experience built I guess when you become desensitized to communication and conversation, and you don't want confrontation, then you look at the other side where you say, you know what, we're not good for each other. And what I could, and from just that short clip and the way that it aired out, names were used, and it's almost if though this was the last straw. It sounded to me, again, I'm the observer on the internet in the back row, who used to be a church musician, who knew what it meant to be chastised while you're on the instrument during the services, and who would not lash out but would become subject to whoever was in the microphone. And I guess that's the approach for this conversation that I want to be able to share. Again, a lot of point of views are out there. Some I've been watching today just went out 9 hours ago. So I wanted to see what was their take. Did they take sides? And sometimes when you're in the congregation, you're always going to side on the side of the pastor. If you're in the music department, you're going to side on the side of the musician, and then that makes for a very unpleasant work environment. As I said, I was a musician in the Kojic Church, in the Baptist Church, in the United Methodist Church, and I am retired after 46 years. So you can imagine that I recognized that it was not time for me to fight, not time for me to battle when it comes to the music of the church. If I'm not doing what is required, or if micromanagement is necessary, again, I'm not saying that's what's happening here. The pastor, as I understood it, wanted the music to stop. And I would assume, again, because I'm not there, but just taking a perspective from being in so many hundreds of services, I guess thousands if you go by over 46 years, and average 3 to 5 services every week, the pastor wanted to get to another part of the service, and let's stop this so that we can move on. I think there need to be a instructional session given for every musician, even the older ones, to say, here's how a service can go in a good way, and here's how a church service can go in a negative way. Let's use these type of videos as a training tool. Not that you want to out the church or the pastor or the musician whose name was said in the video, but just so that a conversation can be had to say that if this were to happen to you, and what would your first reaction? Because hindsight will always be for everybody who was in the view of the recording. This is the pastor and the musician, and we'll include the drummer because he was with the musician, so you sort of saw the side that the drummer was on. I'm sure they're looking back and they're saying, you know what? We made mistakes. We said things we should not have said because it got out in the social media and has stirred up in a negative way and maybe in a positive way thoughts that were underlying and thoughts that probably weren't even thought about. If you've never experienced this, then you wouldn't know. So when I see, and I'm going to bring this to a close, when I see conversations about this and the person says, and they're just an observer, a church congregant, and the video is there, unless you've been out, they say, unless you've been on the field, you don't know what it is to have a fastball thrown at you, or you don't know what it is to have to run 90 feet to a base all out. All you do is you see the result. He didn't run fast enough, or why can't you hit that fastball? I've been on the basketball court as an undersized player when I was a youngster, so I could never be picked on the teams of the guys who were taller. But when I did get a chance to play, I stood outside and shot the ball and hit from 3-pointers where they couldn't come out there and check me. But if I went inside, I got the ball blocked and basically was asked off the team. So music ministry, it's a team effort, but there has to be a team leader. There has to be someone who is in authority. There has to be someone to call the shots. As they say, the buck stops here. And in this short clip, and I'm bringing it to a close, in this short clip, when the buck, and I'm talking about the dollar, when the buck was stopped, when the declaration of you're not going to be of service with us anymore, all of a sudden, the musician became subject and the music stopped. Your thoughts? Sam Tolbert, Sound of Joy, Music Services. Take care.